What is up? I'm Miguel Antonio, and you are listening to the Live and Create podcast. It's where I interview artists and entrepreneurs about what it means to live a great life and create great things. And before we jump into the podcast, I'd love for you to check out my band, Run With It. Here is a clip from our song, Time.
Time, you left your scars. Hope was there. I gave her my heart. Hope, take me in your arms. I see the path, but it seems so far.
If you like what you heard, make sure you check us out at Run With It Band, at Run With It Band, everywhere you follow people at, or go to runwithitband.net. It'll take you to all the different links you want to go to, and there'll be a little button you can click for booking information. Now for today's podcast.
The Live and Create podcast.
I think it'd be good.
Oh, dude, yeah, I think it's awesome. No, I love that you're doing this too. Like, and just in terms of like having a podcast and like having the opportunity to like talk to people and chat about life. You know, that's super freaking cool.
Heck yeah. Unless it's like backstage or like during shows when I'm sharing the stage, like you and I have talked,
Right.
or on the road. Like just the pace of life. It's sometimes hard for me to even get away with as much as I'm playing. You probably know the same pain, you know,
dude.
as much as I'm playing, then you stack the kids and family on top of that. And so like this, I've been loving it because it's helped me connect with folks where I don't always get to.
I have to be like,
just
okay,
always on the go.
Yeah. The life of a musician. The life
Definitely,
of a musician.
Well, and I think you and I have basically we've done a few podcasts, essentially. We just didn't record them when we, before several shows where we're sipping wine or eating copious amounts of steak when they decide to serve us steak before the show. But I really enjoy the vibe. And, I want to dive in first to this idea of collaboration, because obviously in your project you released under your own name, it's full of collaboration as well. And seeing you on stage, like the being on stage and just the connection with all the different people, I can tell you love it. And
oh my
that's
God,
fun.
yeah.
So where does your passion for collaboration come from in music?
Man, I think that's a great question, because for me, it's like it's almost like a value that was passed down to me, almost from family and generationally. I think this idea of sharing, dinners, sharing ideas, sharing stories, sharing music, translated really well from a family standpoint to my professional career and to my music career. And I think for me, like what was super important was like this concept of like, hey, how can we work together to make something awesome? You know, how could we put our brains together and just make a project a reality, you know? And I think for me, like it's a value that's ingrained in me. You know, it's like I feel like I was born with it. I carry it with me every day, and that's like how I see the world, is about collaborations.
Well, when you say sharing dinner, is it essentially like even back to memories as a kid, being at the table with your family? That's where they began instilling that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, everybody somehow, you know how family is, where it's like they want to be involved in your life somehow. They want to give you advice on things that sometimes they don't necessarily should give you advice on, but you're kind of like, oh, I guess I have no choice but to listen to this right now in front of everybody.
It's like, I guess you guys raised me, so
I guess I have to listen to this, man. And next thing you know, there's like 10 of us at the table or 15 of us. You got uncles and you got cousins and you got dinners, and everybody's like, oh, I did this and I'm trying this, and what do you think? And, or I want to launch this, I've got this product idea. And I think so that the essence, the root of that collaborative feeling, came from those dinner conversations, came from those family dinners, or even friends, just talking about ideas and saying, hey, why don't you take care of that and I do that and we try something, And so it really started at a very young age for me, and then it just kind of progressed and was omnipresent in my life, and and today as well.
That's really cool. That's Eddie Moore, who I think we've talked about it. You work with him as well.
Yeah.
He was on the podcast, and we were basically talking about how music is almost like cooking, where you can take these different cultures and bring them together to bring out different flavors. And I loved when he broke that down. I love that analogy of it. So in a sense, you're cooking in a different way.
Absolutely. I love
when
it.
You're in the studio.
It's a fantastic analogy. I would almost go one step further, which is something I use a lot because I like imagery and I like the association of imagery with music. For me, music is like, colors on a paintbrush, or colors on a palette, and so you can have your color palette with like, hey, I got my reds, I got my blues, I got my yellows and my turquoise, but I don't really know how to do or green, or I don't know how to do a bronze, and so you come to meet another person with a different color palette, and that person has a whole array of colors that you've never heard before, and so now you're over here blending all those different colors in your artwork. And for me, that's kind of like the way I'm able to like see how music is, and how, it's like a visual medium. It's like, it's just art, and it's this beautiful mix of all these different colors.
Yeah, I love that. We do these songwriting days, like full days of writing with the band. And that's kind of how it is. Like I'll bring in like a brown and a yellow, and then Daniel comes in and he's like, what if we threw some green in it? And it's like, it continues to grow and grow, all the way till like we were actually on our way into the studio after fully writing the song, fully demoing the song.
Yeah.
And we traveled all the way to Nashville, and then we're driving to the studio and we're like, hey, should we change this lyric and tweak this?
Like, well, okay.
And going, it's like, we just need a little tweak on the bronze, if to go with your colors that you're picking.
Absolutely.
There.
Yeah.
But it is cool because in the end, the collaboration piece, I'm falling more and more in love with it. I've been more of a solo kind of person in that regard.
Yeah.
But falling in love with it because, it's one, when you hear the product, you're like, yeah, fuck yeah. Where you don't feel arrogant because you're like, I was just part of that. Like, fuck yeah. We did that. You could be like more, I don't know, more excited about it without feeling like an ass,
Right. Yeah. You're like, man,
but then you create, and you like create something better, I think, than just one person would in their own little bubble.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's at the essence, I feel like in any art form, like we all are inspired by others all the time. We're always taking in, even subconsciously, I realized that, I found myself writing a song out of the blue, right? It's like 2 a.m. I'm like, lightning strike, I got inspiration. I go to the computer, I start writing a tune, and I'm like, damn, I'm really proud of this. This is really cool piece. It's like a minute, 2 minutes or whatever. And I'm starting to share it with people, and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds like that song that came out like 4 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I've never heard that song before. And you're like, well, yeah, you kind of, we're inspired by things all the time, sounds and things we hear around us, people, and so naturally the essence of collaboration, I think, is already there. It's already in us. It's already with us. And so I think being able to capture it and be mindful and intentful about it just allows you to even explore more of what that is.
Absolutely. It's funny you said that. I had like 30, 40 songs that I'd written, going through it with our producer at the time. It's just him and I in the studio. And there was one song I was like, man, the melody on this, I was feeling really good about it. And I played it for him, and he was like walking in and out of the studio. Some people just like to pace and listen. And
right.
He comes in the studio and just starts singing a Taylor Swift song note for note over my melody. And what's so funny is, like, though I like Taylor Swift and I respect what she does, I don't I'm not listening to music all the time. So I was like, how the fuck did I rip off like almost completely a Taylor Swift song? So like I said, you don't even notice it. But when you start, like, I guess for you, so to let you know, like my journey, I've been trying to read like more fiction because I feel the stories inspire me, the storytelling and the imagery, all
Yeah.
that. What are some of the things that you do to cultivate that piece and to learn to recognize it more and more?
Like what I use to get inspired in general, and like,
yeah, and maybe even what do you use, or is there a practice where you try to train yourself to recognize those influences that might be random out and about in the world?
I think for me, somehow my ear developed very early on. I was able to like capture and hear a lot of different things and associate. Um, I think for me, it just happens naturally to where I'll be listening, I'll be working on a piece, and then I'll say, oh, this sounds like, something I wrote that sounds like maybe this artist that I'm really influenced by, or like I'll have moments in the studio where I think about it in a more like I try to detach myself from my body or detach myself from the project and just think about like, okay, what am I going for in this song? What does this song inspire me? Like just the other day, I wrote a track and I was heavily inspired by PJ Morton, and one of his latest releases, super gospel-y. And I was like, oh, this definitely sounds like a PJ Morton song. Like this definitely sounds like and so I have moments like that where I just sit down with myself and acknowledge that I'm heavily inspired by these artists around me. And I think for me, it's almost like a thank you and an homage to like all these people that I really vibe with, that I love listening to, and I just kind of embed it into my it's mindful usage, mindful,
Yeah.
being aware of it. I think is what how I interpret it, or I see it.
Do you find that when you step back to acknowledge that, it gives you stronger direction when you step back into the creative process?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think for me, I need to separate myself from the projects, especially if they've lasted a certain amount of time. If you're on it for like my last record was like 4 years in the making. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, do it if, of course. I mean, there's no law that says, or rule that says you have to do anything any way. But if you become too attached or you become too connected to the project, you sometimes lose sense of the direction you originally had. But thankfully I was able to like pause in the process and be like, hey, I am not going to engineer this album. I'm gonna have somebody else do it because I'm too attached to it. I love it too much to where I need to be okay with where it's at and letting go, and accept that, yeah, these are little parts of yourself, that you release in the world, and just allowing
our little
like
babies
in the world, doing the little thing, and then you just hope that it reaches people, and you put all your efforts, of course, into the promotion of it and what and the energy behind it, but you just hope that it reaches people on a soul level, on a personal level, versus just a listener, and just a listening for the background. It's like you want people to kind of resonate with your music, so you have to let go. It's a big part of like making albums, I think, is just being like, this is good, I like it, let's go, let's
Well, and I have a particular song that's never seen the light of day. I performed it live quite a bit, and it's always gone over well, but I was never happy with the recordings. And so I would just keep rehashing it. And now it just seems like its time has passed, and so it kind of makes me sad. I kind of wish I just would have done cause I actually paid for a full professional recording, other, people like all that stuff. And then I was like, there's some things I wasn't happy about, but now I actually regret not putting out and I could just go still put it out, but it's almost like the energy of it's gone.
You're like,
maybe I'm being too artistic about it right now and just need to fucking post it.
But like, it's out now.
Yeah. Here, I'll just post it right now on the podcast. But yeah, it has made me think where, just waiting too long can sometimes hinder the energy once it comes out in a way too. I don't know 100%. If you've experienced that.
100%. Oh, all the time. So like on my hard drive right now, sitting I have like, hundreds of tracks, and I'm just like, even if they're like snippets, like 30 seconds long or 45 seconds long, like you go back and you're like, wait, this was 2017, and you open up the file and like, this is cool. I never messed with this, and you're like, but I have no idea what direction I was trying to go with this. So you're just kind of like, close, and you go back and you start a new project, and you're like, shoot, 101 now. It kind of goes like that. Yeah, it goes in waves. I think you have to have like a direction to tell yourself, hey, I'm gonna go back in and like work on all these old tunes. I'm gonna dedicate like a week and just go back in and see if I can recapture that vibe, and then figure
I'm
it
smiling
out.
so big because I actually right now I'm in a period where there's a lot of business shit that's having to take place behind the scenes, and I only have very minimal time. It's almost like my writing time right now is just to stay in shape, because the big races are coming later, kind of deal. And I've actually been thinking, and I know things kind of drop a little bit off in January. So I'm like, it would be kind of cool just to take like a few weeks and say, okay, these next few weeks, I'm going through everything in my hard drive. Exactly. And we're going to finish it. Even if I want to vomit when I press bounce, just fucking finish them. Just as, like you said, an exercise in a way, like of discipline. How do you, that makes me think too, because there is this part of writing, right? Where we're working on a new song that might come out in 2025 and might make it to the top for top of our list. Cause we just write, and then we shake it up and figure out, right? Probably the same thing for you. If I'm sitting at this piano right behind me and I just kind of loop like a piano thing and I just start singing. It's almost like those words, those initial things come out of nowhere. Right. But then there comes this discipline of crafting. At least that's my process. What does that look like for you? The inspiration versus the discipline of finishing. What does that look like in your writing process?
It's a really fine line to navigate creating little pieces and snippets of things and then actually completing them, right? Like having that discipline. Like I find myself all the time with, like I said, like lightning strikes of inspiration. I'll be like, oh my God, I have this super cool idea. And most of the times for me personally, they manifest themselves as choruses and hooks. I feel like if I had an application where you had to like, what do you do well in songwriting? I'd be like, I write hooks. That's about what I do. The rest, I don't know about it. I don't know about verses.
Bridges, fuck that. Hooks, baby. Yeah, we can do some hooks.
We can do some hooks. Yeah, I got them all day long. I got you. And so like, I love that. I'm like, okay, I'll just write a shit ton of hooks and hope for the best that I get inspired to write a verse next to it. Right. But it really, for me, it's just again, I come back to this concept of like mindfulness and being like very, very, and it can only get better over the years because it's all about practice and it's all about like knowing, okay, for me, like, again, I have a shit ton of songs on my hard drive and I'm sure I'm not going to get to all of them in the near future in any way in capacity. And I know for a fact that I'm writing songs every day. So it's the catalog gets bigger, but it's now every time you add a song to your catalog, you're like, okay, what kind of deadline can I tell myself? Or okay, I may not be able to finish this song by myself. Maybe who can I collaborate with? To bring back this idea of collaboration into our conversation, this idea of like how I operate. It's like, okay, I may write these killer hooks and I may write a couple verses, but I'm like, I don't know what the lyrics, I don't know what I'm inspired by in this song. Let's bring a lyricist in. Let's bring a vocalist in. Let's bring, a guitar player in. And so I've begun to create a process in my head and in person to where I'm like, okay, let's finish this project. What does it need to get done? And who can possibly, like, if it's not just by myself, who can I possibly work with or collaborate with to get the project done or to get it to a point where it's like, this is a nice piece. All it needs could be like a little bit of mixing and a nice vocal melody thrown onto it, And you start setting like systems in place, I think. And that's how it works for me.
So you like hang out with the muse and get a little nugget, and then you become the project manager and get that thing finished in a sense.
Yeah. So, you cut out a little bit just before that.
Oh, gotcha. Some weird thing popped up on my screen too. I didn't have a chance to read it because I was talking. No, I was just saying it sounds like in a sense you hang out with the muse, get a little nugget, and then you come out and start becoming the project manager. Like, hey,
exactly.
Let's piece all these things together, make it a win.
I feel like over the years, that's what my role has become more and more too. Being very much a leader on a lot of projects and a like pioneering of concepts, because I'm always boiling with ideas, and I always find myself like, oh, well, I'm only one person and I can't really do all these ideas by myself. And I'd love to do these ideas with all my friends because I trust them and I'd love to just go on this journey. So I find myself at the head of a lot of these creative projects and being like, okay, let's find the pieces of the puzzle together, and let's put everybody where their strong suit is in place so that we can make the project a reality, you know. And I think that's how we should do it as a micro music industry, and you know, as we're creating our own industry here locally in Kansas City, but also just in general for indie musicians and artists who are trying themselves at the music biz. You know, we have to really cultivate that idea of collaboration, partnerships, and knowing where our limits are, and where another person's role begins.
That's awesome, man. You had mentioned something in your bio where you're talking about reshaping the music industry, and it sounds like you're kind of unpacking that already as we're talking. But when you think of that term, reshaping the industry, what does that mean to you?
I think from a perspective of like, just if we take a step back and look at like, okay, you know, what are our big industries, you know, our music industry, or Hollywood and the West Coast and the East Coast, what are our big poles in the United States and even in the world? We can see that it's very, you know, polarized, and it's also very much secluded, and it seems like there's a thick glass wall that prevents all artists from the ground up to even penetrate, get through that wall, and even have a chance at like expressing their art fully without feeling like I can't do it, or I have no voice, or I have no space, you know. And also, you know, with it becoming increasingly harder to stand out in all these like networks and social media,
I see.
as a singular person, it is harder to pop to the top, you know, unless you figure some magical trick out. And there's always exceptions to the rule, you know, but I have I'm not going to, you know, juggle flames and, you know, eat spiders while I'm playing music and say, I can't do all that. And I'm probably not going to do that, you know.
There's an investor I listen to, his name's Naval Ravikant, and he warns people against taking advice from people like him, because he's like most successful people, basically, if they give you advice, they're just giving you the numbers to the lottery ticket they won. You know, he's like, you have to really boil it down to principles and true principles, as opposed to like that one in a million guy who caught lightning in a bottle and just happened. And he's like, the little Nas X who was on his couch, you know, sister's couch, and then 2 weeks later he's, you know, at the VMAs or whatever. Like, that's right. It is. Exactly. It's amazing. It's great that it happened for him, and it could, but that's a terrible business plan
for yourself and for others. I'd say you probably should not wish or hope to. Yeah, don't hang too long around on the couch. You know, you might want to step outside a little bit. And again, in the spirit of collaboration, in the spirit of working together, I think that if we want, for me, it's like, you know, either you go that very difficult route and you struggle, and it's struggle for everybody at different levels in life, you know, and I think that's what the music is about. Struggling music is about, you know, falling down and getting back up, you know. And I think the music industry is not cultivating that idea of, or at least, you know, the concept of like, hey, like, it's hard, but band together, stick together, make some cool projects, and create your own economy, create your own space, create your own, you know, areas where you can help each other out. And it's a circular thing, you know. In we can go extremely deep in this subject because it involves not only music, but now we're talking about a society and economy, and we're talking about, you know, sharing expertise, so like trading, and all these things are part of the music industry. All these things are part of being a musician, because at the end of the day, that's what happened eons ago, you know. Before we had a system in place, before the man, you know, quote unquote, set up Hollywood, this is how it was, you know. There was no system. You know, it was
Right.
a brotherhood, a honest based system to where it's like, hey, let's trade services. You play, I'll do this, I'll help you fix your car. You know, whatever you want to, however you want to see it. You know, um, and to an extent, you know, taking that idea, that's an extreme idea, but to an extent, I think that's what I'm trying to do here in Kansas City. Is I'm trying to be like, hey, we don't have affordable spaces for musicians. We don't have safe, non predatorial spaces for musicians because the industry is perverted and the industry is trying to take people's money and just not like, you know, it's unfortunately there are plenty of loopholes in the system that are just not resolved. And so what I'm trying to do here in Kansas City is cultivate this idea that like we can create music together in a safe space. We can work things out. We can work deals out and find ways to help each other so that your project comes to reality, my project becomes reality, and we all succeed together, you know. And I think that's what's going to be important, especially in a city like KC where there is no like evident music industry yet.
Right. Yeah, and it does seem like the city itself is going through so many growing pains as it tries to become like a big boy city in a sense. Like I'm from Kansas City. I don't mean that necessarily derogatory, but it's like when you go to like Chicago or New York City and you've been, you know, from France, all like when you see these huge metros, it's like Kansas City is starting to realize like, it's like I woke up one day, looked around, was like, oh, we could go this direction one day.
Exactly.
You know, and I think the arts becomes a part of that. One thing it's interesting. It's like, I think of it as the decentralization of the music industry, where I've heard some artists, it's happening less and less now, I think, but I have heard some artists complain that, you know, back in the day, you used to be able to get a deal and you could blow up, you know, they get you on, you know, SNL and they get you on whatever. And, you know, that's a wrap, baby. You're touring the world. It's
right.
Like, that happened for like 30 bands, you know, that
that was it. That was
exactly. And what I'm seeing is so many artists now, because they can reach like I just uploaded a new song that's going to drop here soon, yesterday. I didn't need a record label. You know, you dropped your album. You didn't need a record label. You had friends helping you promote it. You did your show, all those things. Like if you're willing to bust your ass and be creative, like the world's at our fingertips in that regard.
Absolutely.
I see more and more people doing that and finding a way to actually make a living through it. And it's not always pretty or easy, but I do love this component of the collaboration piece in that, and how important it is to back each other up and support each other. And that's really cool.
Yeah, we're in this together. At the end of the day, we're in this together. And, you know, you can try to, you know, use and abuse the system on your own and do whatever you want to do on your own, you know. And again, I mean, no disrespect to anybody. Everybody has a chance to see the world the way they want to see it. But for me, on a personal level, like I would rather succeed with all my friends by my side, than on my own. I would want to spend all that time with the people that I care about, because at the end of the day, this is what music is about, is bringing people together, not dividing, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, at the root of music, like it is about celebrating life. It is about celebrating being human and just sharing a good moment together. So why not do those projects together as well?
Right. Well, and I think it's a good lesson for younger artists coming into the scene. Because I'll be honest, my stepping into the scene, which was quite some time ago, I'm a little older, was that of people not supporting what I was doing, and because I didn't fit into what was currently happening. And so I kind of had to go, basically had the mindset of like, all right, well, fuck it. I'm just going to go do my thing, and found success that way. But I think two things are true that I didn't think about then. One is there were probably other people around. I just happened to meet the first people I met. I felt rejected by, so I was like, fuck it. So I probably did. I think a healthier thing would have been like, okay, I just need to go find my people, you know?
Exactly.
But another thing I have noticed is the younger and younger classes coming up in the music industry right now, especially in Kansas City, I find just like this refreshing sense of like them all working together. Like I was working backstage at Boulevardia one day, and none of the bands I had even heard of, and they're all much younger than me, and like hanging out backstage with all of them and how they were collaborating, getting on and off stage with each other and like in each other's bands. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, I wish I would have found this when I first got there. So I think it's a good lesson for, you know, someone out there. Don't let people just there are going to be people who might shit on you, but I think there's a whole world out there if you just keep looking, of support. And I think more and more now, it's almost like the younger and younger artists I meet, the more open they are to collaboration.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very much open-ended in the sense that like it's going to continue to grow and evolve and transform itself, and people are going to find new ways to collaborate and work together. For me, it's also like interdisciplinary as well, you know, across the arts, you know, from music to visual mediums.
Right.
I think it's going to be crucially important to just keep staying tight, you know, and keep a tight network of people and keep cultivating that concept, you know, like, yeah, let's play in each other's bands, you know, why not?
Do you know Devin Turan? Are you familiar with him? Have I mentioned it?
That name does sound familiar. Does he play steel pedal?
Yes.
Yeah.
That dude is in like, I don't know how many bands.
Yeah.
And it was funny. One day I was a stage manager for a festival and he played in one band, and he was the only one who didn't clear his stuff off the stage. And I'm trying to move things along. I just met him that day, and I was like, "Hey man, I'm not trying to be a jackass, but I need you to get going." And he goes, "No, I'm in the next band." I thought he was fucking with me.
You're like, "What? You just played with 3 bands?"
Yeah, and he literally, I think, was in 3 or 4 bands on the exact same stage. That he's like, it just happened that we all got booked.
That is brilliant.
I was like, okay, he's an incredible collaborator, incredible songwriter, producer as well. Like, yeah, he's definitely check out some of the stuff he's doing. Hopefully, you guys will get to
absolutely.
connect.
We have, I think, in the past, but it's almost like 2 ships in a night. Like we've talked a little bit, and then we went back onto our own like journeys. We're like, he's like, hey, because I think at the time I was producing this artist called Elizabeth Day, and she and him had started a song, and then it kind of things lifed, you know, it's been lifing, you know, doing its thing or whatever, and and you know, we kind of lost touch. But I would love to. This is a great way to reconnect too with some of the musical peers in Kansas City, and again, continue to bridge that gap.
Yeah, lifing. Devin and I we wrote a song in January together. But I've yet to have the time to get back together. I think things kind of went crazy for him this year too. And so maybe next January we can finish it and record it.
Yeah. It's like one of those situations. It's like, yeah, you remember that song you wrote like 7 years ago? I think we should finish it.
We should finish it. Get it out in the world. I heard this podcast that said, just fucking put it out.
I agree. I love that idea. Let's go. Let's go. I mean, I think that's exactly the mentality I'm cultivating too in this studio. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let's no longer like spend 16 hours on this one snare hit. Let's move on. Let's keep the organicness of it. Let's not do Hollywood. Let's do our thing. You know, let's do our thing. It sounds good. It feels good. It on an energetic level and on a soul level. I love it. If it's a vibe and you like it, then you're good to go.
One time, Daniel and I were sitting. It was just him and I for several hours, and the bass player walks in at like 3 p.m. And Daniel and I, he's like, "What'd you guys do today?" We're like, "We got a really cool snare sound." Like, no shit.
Like, wait,
and we don't even use that snare. Like, it's like buried in a folder somewhere now. It's like we wasted so much time. We could have done something way better, but man, we were obsessed about like finding that exact for
at
demos. It wasn't for the damn track. It was just for the demos. That was dumb.
I know. I'm so right there with you. Exactly right there with you. I'm like, why did I do this? Why did I spend so much time on this? But it's like, yeah, you have it now. You have a snare sound.
That's true. Really. We have somewhere in a folder, somewhere in there. It made it on nothing. Like maybe one of our demos it made it on.
Can I license this out?
Yeah, like, it's one snare.
Can I rent the snare?
Quarters on the snare.
Like, oh man, yeah.
Some music producers like, oh man, that snare. Here you go, $5,000.
There's like, that's the Miguel sound right there. They're like, we need that one on the next Dua Lipa record.
Yep, that's exactly what's gonna happen.
Oh man,
oh my god, that makes me think of. Are you familiar? I think it's Pareto's Law.
That sounds extremely familiar.
So he was studying the cultivation of peas, and figured out like 20% of the crop provided 80% of the yield. And then they from that, they started transferring the same concept into economics, and basically has become this thing even in like factory workers, and all across business. They're seeing like usually it's 20% of the efforts, even 20% of your personnel will produce 80% of
the work,
of the actual work. And so that's even one thing we have been discussing in the band of what, you know, what are the things we're just spinning our wheels on that seem super important, but probably aren't, you know, like where sometimes we'll argue about a the versus an and in a lyric. And it's like, maybe we just need to get it down and let the demo sit in the drive for a few months. We'll come back and we'll choose which one we like, you know, that kind of thing.
A/B it, like you said earlier, like see what feels right, you know?
Yeah. And go with the gut. Now, one thing you have mentioned a lot in here is this idea of mindfulness. Obviously, your first track on your album's got this meditation theme, which I personally love. Is music mindfulness to you, or is mindfulness also like a practice in your life? Is meditation, those kind of things?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it stems from a lot of different things, from yoga to just meditation in general, just being connected to yourself. You know, it's for me, it was very easy to get lost, quote unquote, in the world, you know, into what's happening. You know, it's kind of like you're this little peg, this little, you know, tiny microscopic grain of sand in the middle of the universe, you know, and you're just kind of flowing and figuring things out, but you don't really know who you are. You lose touch sometimes with yourself, you know, and your values and where you come from, and the things that you've done right and the things that you've succeeded in, versus looking at the things that you didn't make, or the things that you haven't succeeded in, or the things that you feel like you haven't accomplished, you know. And so it's very easy for us humans to err, you know, on the side of negativity, you know, and what we haven't done right, you know. And I think there's a beautiful study. I've been listening to podcasts with neuroscientists talking about thousands of negative ideas per minute versus, you know, a very minute amount of positive ideas in comparison per day. And so working towards this idea of mindfulness for me was reconnecting with myself and being like, okay, who am I? You know, who is Vincent Orsolini? You know, like even from an existential, you can go as far as an existential, you know, situation where you're like, what am I in the universe? What is my place here on this planet?
Right.
But also, or very, very much down to earth in the sense that like, what am I doing? Who am I? What are my values? And what do I want to share with the world on my journey here in this world? You know, what do I want to, who do I want to be, and what do I want to portray, and how do I want to touch people like in their minds and their souls with what I do, with my art, with my music. So I incorporate that on a day-to-day basis in my life, you know, with my friends, with going out, you know, and networking, and again, bringing people together, finding safe spaces to talk about things and to express yourself fully, because in our society today, we have an incredible lack of vulnerability. We're lacking, you know, in the ability to be vulnerable, because people either don't have the tools to receive your vulnerability, or you don't have the tools to be vulnerable with others. And so the mindfulness practice for me allows me not only to be vulnerable with the people around me, talking to you, talking to my friends, talking to my peers. It allows me to reconnect with myself and grow as a person every day, you know.
That's awesome, man. Well, and I know that's such an important thing, I think, in this industry, because, man, right, we can just run and run and run and run ourselves into the ground, and then you sleep for 16 hours, you know, one time out of a month, and then just run and run and run again, you know.
Exactly.
And was it Kadesh who was rapping, talking about that in your song as well?
Yes.
I know he shared about that online in the past, about like that burnout that can so easily happen. And a friend of mine is a coach, like a business coach, music coach kind of thing. And that's one thing we spend a lot of time talking about, is learning the places to breathe, you know. Even in, like, I actually find I operate better at a higher pace in general, but the wheels will fly off for me too. So it's like the trick of figuring out, you know, how not to. And honestly, it has been that meditation piece as well. So that's why when I heard that track, I was like, immediately is like, I'm in on this. I love
Take
this
the
a
time to
lot.
see the light, you know, man. Take the time to feel. Take the time to feel all right, you know. Like take the
Yeah.
time to figure things out. You know, it doesn't have to be this rush. It doesn't have to be, you know, crazy. And it's actually ties perfectly into Morning Sun, which it features Kemet on it, and it talks about start and go. That's all we know. Time to change that modern flow. And so the idea behind those lyrics is like, you know, everything is start and go. That's all we know. Time to change the modern flow. Like we're taught to constantly go, you know. And it's about time we start changing the way we do things for our own well-being.
Right. When I think about the most inspiring artists and business people that I follow, all of that, almost all of them, one of the main characteristics they have is that they decided to live life or do this thing on their own terms and not let the world, the business, what everyone else is doing dictate it, you know. And some of them, because of that, some of them actually run at a higher pace than other people, and people throw rocks at them, but they're like, no, I'm happy. And some of them, you know, carved out really strong barriers or boundaries, I guess, for their family to make sure they protect their family, all those things. And I think it is important. And maybe in the beginning, it's so hard, like, you know, early 20s as we're going in music. It's like as you get older, it gets a little tougher if you don't have those boundaries and find that space.
Yeah, it's easy. Sure. It's very easy to get pulled into 17 different directions because, you know, you want to try things, you know, you're always open to trying things, you know. If you're that kind of person where you're like creative and you're always thinking of things, it could easily spiral into burnout, like you were talking about, like where you're just like, oh, I've 14 projects that I'm working on at the same time simultaneously, and I'm totally fine on like 7 cups of coffee this morning and, you know, 19 lattes
in 2 hours of sleep
in like a month. You know, it's easy to get into that. It's really easy to slip into that condition and to slip into that frame of mind. But I think being mindful of that and being like, hey, am I erring on the side of burnout right now? Am I tackling? Should I say no? You know, like knowing when to say no and knowing when to say yes is also like part of that mindfulness journey for me personally, at least. Like it's just like, you know, I'm always going to be a yes, let's do it. But also like, let's do it maybe in a year when things are better. You know, it's knowing that yes is not like immediate. It's not like, let's do it right now in this exact moment. It's like knowing that, oh, I would love to do this project with you, but I don't have capacity for it at this moment. And it's a difficult thing to set up those boundaries. It's a difficult thing to set that up and be like, hey, this is not right for me in this moment. You know, how do I still capitalize on that opportunity? And hopefully it's still there when you're ready.
Well, and there's a way to communicate that. Obviously, like you are there. I think of like even my kids, where it's like sometimes they'll run into my office when I'm working on something. Like, I really want to hear what you have to say, but I cannot even focus on what you're going to say until I get this done. So can you give me, give me a few minutes? Or like in this case, I really love this project idea, but I can't give you any of my soul until January. You know?
Sorry, I would love to, but like I am unavailable. This is not. Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's so true, man. Well, dude, there's so many directions we could go, but I know the time is running short for myself here. So I wanted to tackle the last 2 questions of the podcast, of course, before we pop out.
Yeah.
First of those is, right now in your life, how would you describe living a great life? Or how would you define it?
Yeah, I think by doing what I love and accepting that it's imperfect and it's okay. You know, I'm loving and embracing everything that I go through in life, whether if it's up high or down low. I'm embracing all the things about life, because at the end of the day, it's about the journey and not the destination. And once I switch my mindset to that, I'm able to like be like very content and very happy with where I'm at, even though I have big aspirations and I want to do so much, and I know I can, and I probably will, and I'm pushing towards it. But I'm making sure to stay right here in the present and be super grateful for all the things that I have around me, the people, my house, my studio, being able to have dinner, to being able to be on a podcast right now, like just coming back to that ground, to being grounded and being like very grateful. I'm super, super grateful for that. And I'm right here in the present.
That's cool, man. I love that. Mindfulness applied,
100%.
Well, it makes me think of, there's like one practice in meditation where if you have like an itch, like you don't scratch it. You allow it to just be present. Yeah, it sucks.
I don't know how well I would do that one. That's a tough one.
I'm not saying I've done it in an easy way, but it's become like that lesson. Kind of what you're saying is like learning to embrace the ups and downs, like learning to embrace even when it's not good. And that is hard. It's a very hard thing for me as well. But yeah, embrace the journey part of it, because that's the only way you can be present. I love that. That's really cool. Well, the last question right now in your life, how would you define creating great things?
How would I define creating great things? I think I allowed and I released a lot of that control. Like, greatness isn't about the control that you have over whatever you're doing. It's more so allowing the universe, like it's, for me, it's very flow, and it's still very much grounded, and it's still very much like in tandem with what's happening. But I've learned to allow whatever happens to speak to me and use it to create whatever it is that I'm doing, And so it could be anything from, building a flower bed to fixing a car. I just kind of allow things to flow through me and respond to it. It's like a call and response versus trying to control it. I think that's what allowed me to
and when you say
create super awesome things.
Sorry, it cut off there. So I started talking. I thought you were done talking, but then I realized it cut off. So I apologize.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're so fine.
So for you, when you say the control, is that also about like the perfection aspect, like controlling that you can't control necessarily that outcome?
Yeah, it's like to quote a really cool book. I would like to add that actually to I have it right here. It's a really, I got the audiobook for it, but as Rick Rubin, he wrote the book The Creative Act.
Yep. It's my new Bible.
And it's what's almost funny about it is that it's literally everything we already know that we have inside of us, right?
Right.
That we just needed to verbalize on paper. He literally took all the things, the essence of what music is. He took the essence of what it is to release, to let go of the perfectionism, and I remember almost like certain segments of the book where I'm like, this is, of course. Yeah. How could, of course, that's what we're supposed to do. You're like, yes, of course. Like, it's almost like you want to talk to him and say, yes, it's a beautiful, basically condensed version of what, like, it is to release and letting go and being able to just be free in your projects, to be free in your life, to do the things that you want to do without feeling, without putting sidelines and confining yourself into a box,
Right. And it is so true. It's like there's so little in our lives we actually can control.
Oh my God, like, nothing.
Yeah. Like just our own actions. And sometimes that's a pretty fine line there too.
Oh my God.
Because
we're human.
We get in the whole, what do people think, like neurologically predestined? Like we're just basically responding to chemicals and all that. Like
all we are is it's like
chemical reactions.
Neurons colliding.
Yep.
Yeah, they're like, today I feel really good. And it's just like,
today
who knows?
I hate the world and I don't know why.
I woke up this way. And you start like, oh, maybe coffee will do it. And it's like a level of collision.
Yeah, so it just made me anxious now. Now I'm angry and anxious.
Now I'm anxious. We're just a big ball of emotions that just float around and just like, oh, I feel this type of way right now. Now I feel like this, and we just got to accept that we are humans after all. And that's what makes us unique on this planet at the end of the day. All differences aside, all politics, all societal confines, all industry aside, at the end of the day, what are we? We're just human beings. And we need to embrace that. We need to embrace our imperfections, and we need to be okay with imperfections, because the best works are most of the times the ones that you're like, this is not finished. And people are like, I love, just like you were telling me the other day, you're like, this song that I wrote that I wasn't a super fan of, the whole band was like, we love this song.
Yeah. They're like, no, you got to put that in there.
You're like, no.
Yeah, that's one more fight was the song. I was like, I literally came in and we had just got done recording it. I was like, nope, we're cutting this song from the EP.
They're like, nope.
And everyone said, no, you were wrong.
Like, that's what you're like, I have to release. Like, you take like a little meditation pose and you're like, nope. I shall not. I let it go. And and that's when you're the most surprised. That's when you're the most surprised. People respond to that. For me, it was that song, Half a Person, on my record. I was hesitant in even playing that song live.
Yeah.
And my bass player was like, Joe, love him to bits. He was like, no, we have to play that song live. I'm like, but I'm not sure. There's only vocals. It's just me. And then at the end, it kind of goes crescendo, but it's like more of a record. He's like, no, we have to play that song. I love that song. And it would, awesome. and you're just like, that's it. You just release, you let go. And that's the best thing we can possibly do as humans. Let's let go.
I love it, man. Well, let people know how they can connect with you and listen to your music.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm pretty much, I think, on almost every platform. I'm trying to catch up to technology, but it's definitely faster than me. But I'm on Instagram at Vincent O_G. You can find me by simply typing my name, Vincent Orsolini, on Google. There's my website, vincentorsolini.com. My album, It's About Time, is out on all platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Pandora, you name it, it's probably on there. Just connect with me and don't be a stranger. And what I love about this podcast, Miguel, is also I want to invite people to not be strangers and to reach out to both of us, to reach out and to collaborate and to not be afraid of making the first move and being like, hey, I live in South Dakota. I have this project. Reach out, come through, tell me what you want to do. Like I want to cultivate an environment of let's make your project a reality.
I love it. And now that we have the digital age, man, the industry is decentralized. You don't all have to be in LA, man. You can be anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Well, dude, thanks for making the time. That was awesome.
Thanks for having me on this. Hope to be on the next one whenever you do it.
Oh, yeah, dude. Well, I think we have more that we got to do because we've covered so many things in our pre-show backstage conversation.
We're like, hey, this is episode 1. Tune in for episode 2. We have some deep stuff, some deep cuts for you.
We'll keep going.
Thank you for listening to the Live and Create podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment or a review.
The Live and Create podcast.